Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Rooted and Rising. I'm really excited about this episode because I'm joined by a friend and a lovely guest today. Hi, Vanessa. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Welcome. So, everyone, this is Vanessa. I'm going to let her actually introduce herself, but I think one of the reasons why I wanted you to be a guest is that I feel, obviously, we've known each other for a few years, but I feel like your heart for a community just across the different places that you've lived in really resonates with me. I feel like you are a kind of builder of community, and you've also been a clear voice for African mental health. So I wanted to dive into some of those topics, including love and faith and all those things. But before we do that, let's talk about who you are in this season. Can you give us a headline? Who is Vanessa in this season?
That's actually a really great question. Who am I in this new season? I'd say in this new season, I'm an innovator, still consider myself a community builder,
Yeah.
and someone that's just primarily focused on social impact
Okay.
and resource mobilization.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
We have similar backgrounds. We're both like public health professionals. So maybe let's talk a little bit about that. What kind of got you into those things? Like what got you into the field?
Yeah, so initially for my undergraduate degree, I had an health science degree. Thought for a very long time that I was going to be a physical therapist and work with kids who were differently abled. My long-term dream at the time while I was in high school and throughout all my undergraduate degree was that I would eventually have my own practice and run it primarily for children dealing
Hmm.
with special needs. And then I went to a study abroad opportunity after I graduated college. Unfortunately, because I was a health and science major, I didn't have the opportunity to do any travel abroad. But when I graduated, I was able to enter into this program that essentially allowed me to live in South Africa for about four to 5 months. And I
Okay.
worked at a children's school, an
Okay.
elementary school, and worked with PT program there to help just rehabilitate the kids. And then also just I worked primarily on their Special Olympics program and
Okay.
left there feeling quite inspired, not only
Mhm.
by work, the PT work that I had done, but just by the school in general and the work that they were doing to fill in the gaps, especially around healthcare, amongst a demographic of people that necessarily didn't have the access to resources. Um, I was working in a township area, and 95% of the kids I was working with had HIV/AIDS. Many of them came from single parent
Households. Yeah.
households, and you saw a lot of them also just deal with a lot of gaps around their healthcare just due to lack of finances,
Mhm.
lack of resources, lack of transportation. And then ultimately, there's also a lot of neglect, and the parents not just, or the parent not just having the right resources or the right time or capacity to really take care of their children. And so
Mhm.
we, as a school, were able to provide them on-site care by having a physician come in once a month to see certain children that we realized really needed a second opinion or just needed some
Yeah.
type of evaluation. And it was really through that that I was like, wow, like this is huge, right? On one end of where I was living in South Africa, there was a plethora of many different resources, hospitals at every
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah.
You see people are actively living their lives and enjoying it. And then 30 to 40 minutes down the road, we have a township area where there's literally little to no resources. Make it make sense. Like, I want to know who's behind closing this gap. How do we get people to have access to the health resources that they need to live healthy and sustainable lives? Where do
Mhm.
we bridge, the gap between people who have health equity and people that don't? Like, what exactly is done, in situations like this? And I left there wanting to find out those answers. And it eventually arrived it eventually led me to arrive at pursuing a master's in global public health.
Okay.
And yeah, that's kind of how my journey started. I got into 1 year accelerated program on the
Mhm.
spot in New York.
Wow.
I had applied for their 2-year program
Mhm.
and got waitlisted, and then decided to go take an Amtrak and go into their admissions office and find out what I needed to do to get off their wait list. And just from one conversation of me sharing my experience in South Africa, I was offered that program immediately on the
Ah,
spot.
okay, okay, go, okay,
Yeah.
go get her. I see you. Okay.
Yeah, no, that was God. I don't take any um and it makes me, anytime I think about that story, it makes me understand that like nothing's unreachable, like yes, there's some level of faith that's required, but if you truly believe, if God truly wants you to be in whatever situation you find yourself, like he will make it
Yeah.
happen. That door will open. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's an amazing story, and I didn't know that. So maybe obviously you're very passionate about public health, and that's very evident from what you're saying about the background. And then, but I think one of the things that how we got to know each other is through your work with mental health as well. So maybe let's talk about what was the first moment that you realized that mental health was something that you were interested in, like what happened and what was the process there?
Yeah, so it was kind of like a domino effect. Went from PT to public health, and from public health into mental health, just through the program. I mean, this was a very new program. They had just started the program, I think, a year or two ago before I was accepted
Was this
into it.
at NYU or
Yes,
somewhere
this
else?
was no
Okay.
NYU Global Public Health Program.
Okay.
So immediately I got this, offer. I started class in, I think, 3 weeks later.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I started that summer, and basically it was a 1-year program in DC, the one semester in DC, one semester in Accra, Ghana, and then another semester in
Mhm.
Abu Dhabi.
I
And
see.
so it was while I was in Accra, Ghana that I got into mental health. I had a professor that I was learning from at the University of Ghana, Legon, and he was a social behavioral psych professor. He was
Mhm.
very transparent about his own experience with mental health and being an African man and having to deal with depression, just even from experiencing loss and grief. And it wasn't even that someone died at the time, it was the loss of a relationship that he had really
Okay.
valued and thought would eventually lead to marriage. And because it didn't work out, he saw himself really go through a 3-year spell of depression where he was up and down and really trying to get on his feet. And he talked about the stigma and the challenges of dealing with that as a man and an African man at that. And that
Yeah.
really kind of got me like, oh, interesting. You know what I mean? Like, I never really thought about it. You're right. Men are told not to cry, right? Men really, are forced to kind of hold things in. And who do
Push
they
it down.
talk to?
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So then we went to a psych hospital, a cross psych hospital. It was our first in-person visit. And
Yeah.
that was like really what changed the trajectory for me. I got into the psych hospital not really knowing what to expect, but I like to say it. I've said it like a million times on different conversations, but it was more like lack of resources, no staffing or little to no staffing, the poor conditions around many of the participants, where they were living, the neglect, the almost like feeling like you're in a space where people are forgotten. I mean, I met an 80-year-old woman, and the person that took us on a tour had told us no one had come to visit her in the past 20 to 30 years that she'd been there.
Wow.
And so for me, I'm
So
like,
it's like
wow.
people are just placed there and forgotten about, kind of like it's wow. Okay.
Some people are even, it was so bad that some people, their families initially pay the fee
Yeah.
to get them in there, and then they just disappear because they don't have the finances to maintain the level of care.
Mhm.
So they just are left there without any points
That's
of
really sad.
contact
That's so sad.
there.
Yeah. Okay. So
So
that.
yeah, that's how I got into. I mean, from there, I decided to change my master's thesis. I had been working on my master's thesis at this point for about 4 to 5 months. I was
Mhm.
working on a completely different topic around um, contraception and, working with young women to understand, sexual, rights and, just talking about, women's health and, the cultural nuances that play a role in women understanding their rights. And in that moment, I just changed it. I was like, actually, I want to focus my thesis on mental health. And I mean, at that time, I remember my master's thesis. uh Advisor was like, I don't, you don't have that much time. Like you only have about like what, 7 to 8 months before you graduate. Like, are you sure you want to change it? And I was like, yeah, because this is a real issue, a real challenge. I'm visibly seeing it, and I feel inclined to want to do more research around it. And she goes, you know what? Like, if this is what you want to do, just do it. And yeah, I was able to get, my dissertation in on time, and really just write a thesis focused on the attitudes and behaviors towards mental health, and
Was
building
your
a.
context Ghana specifically, or did you do like Nigeria? Like what was your, or
It was
Africa?
it was Ghana. So the context in which I did it was Ghana, and it was really just primarily trying to put together a social marketing campaign that would address mental health, and pull from like different social marketing campaigns, not just in Ghana, but worldwide or globally, and seeing how that had impacted people's attitudes and behaviors towards health seeking behaviors, and seeing like how this research could then prove that something similar could be done in the context of a student or young person living in Ghana, being able to receive the same messaging through social marketing,
Yeah.
and then therefore make it an impact on the ways that they view mental health.
So how did this research then kind of lead into you forming African Mental Health Matters in that
Yeah,
sense?
so yeah, no, for Africa's Mental Health Matters, once again, it feels like a domino effect when I kind of go through this, but like I just, presented my dissertation to a group or a board at NYU, and the only question I received was like, are you going to implement this? Because this seems very feasible. Like you've done the research, and it seems like, this is something that can actually be done. And I remember looking at them like, I don't think so. Like, I'm just a student graduating. I'm still trying to, get my footing in what life looks like even after this. I
Yeah.
don't live on the continent. Like, I'd love to explore it, but I'm honestly not sure. And then I left, and as I moved on after the program, I ended up getting a job in Abidjan and Cote d'Ivoire, working
Mhm.
with Save the Children. And in that process, I just realized that like I was going to be doing work for another organization. But what was I going to be able to do outside of my work? Like what, legacy would I be able to leave behind one day, and what was a mission that I could commit myself to even outside of my 9 to 5? And there and then I just figured like I was going to be on the continent. Why don't I pursue Africa's mental health? Why don't I put together something and just try it, And that's how I decided that, I was going to do my first mental health conference in Accra, Ghana. And it was just through calling therapists through Instagram, and through my network of contacts, and asking them like, hey, do you think this would work? Like, has this been done before? Like, what are your thoughts? And from there, I started raising funds and money, and I did my first
Wow.
conference in December 2018.
Wow. And so what, like from that conference, because that's a big deal, right? Like you said, mental health is not an area that I think the continent or African professionals or culturally, it's not something that we are very comfortable with. I think things are improving now, maybe with the new generation, but it hasn't always been like that. So from that conference, what were some of the topics or issues that you saw kind of continuously coming up when it came to mental health on the continent?
I think number one, it was the lack of collaboration, which is why I really wanted to do this conference. I felt there was a lot of organizations, individuals, nonprofits,
Mhm.
therapists, a bunch of people doing a lot of great work around mental health, but
We're
yet no
connected.
one was coming together
Yeah.
and collaborating, and let alone people just not even knowing what other people are doing. So being in the room, like one thing I was really intentional about is like I want everyone who is in this mental health space to be in the room. I want there to be a table dedicated to each organization or hospital. Um, and I want people to be able to speak on it, right? So I wanted it to be a conversation, not just amongst the mental health advocates or stakeholders, but I wanted people who were also involved in policy. I wanted
Mhm.
people who were students. I wanted people who were young adults just working, a 9 to 5. I wanted people who were social influencers. I wanted everyone to partake in a conversation around the different topics that we shared because I knew that it somehow, some way impacted them. And I also wanted it to be a conversation where people could share their perspective and also just share, how they've been able to navigate, like where the gaps have lied and how we could then fill those gaps as a larger conversation. Another thing that I noticed was that for a long time, people didn't feel comfortable talking about it, similar to your comment in 2018. It was kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of stigma around mental health. Like you're not able to broadly come out and say you're struggling with depression or anxiety or so on and so forth. And so creating this open space was like almost very therapeutic for everyone in the room because they had never encountered a space like this where they could freely, confidently speak on some of the challenges they had experienced, as an individual, just
Right.
navigating the country. And then
Mhm.
three, I also realized that there wasn't much shared experience publicly being shared. So that being said, like a lot of people came in just not really like dealing with things once again in silos, but not having people that they can necessarily relate to. And
Mhm.
so having conversations where people could identify the same challenges or the same issues
Right.
that maybe they had experienced, but then understanding that they weren't doing this alone and that there were other people also equally going through the same thing, I think changed the whole narrative of the conversation from, feeling alone and feeling like this is like a lonely path versus, understanding that people are actively also going through the same thing and can equally understand.
And okay, okay. No, that's really helpful. I also wonder, like, from your experience or just, in with African mental health, do you feel that mental health conversations are happening more among Africans in the diaspora versus those on the continent, or do you think it's about the same level?
That's a good question. I think they're happening almost at the same level. There's still this gap, right? Like we more recently, and we can talk about this a bit later, pivoted to like corporate wellness,
Yeah.
and I am seeing that like fundamentally because of the way things are going, the U.S. is a little bit more of a space. It's more liberating where you can speak and go to HR and have time off for a
Yeah.
mental health day,
Yeah.
versus you being on the continent and dealing with things internally and don't not wanting this to
Affected
impact or affect the way that um the
employers.
person you're reporting to is
Yeah.
going to receive you or receive the work that you're doing. So there
Maybe
is
your
this.
employer like talking to you crazy sometimes because that's all.
Exactly, exactly. So it's
Yeah.
this gap like of yeah, we can readily talk about it when when the spaces exist, but
Mhm.
outside of those spaces, are we carrying mental health and wellness with us, right? Can we boldly talk about it
Mhm.
publicly in spaces where also our employment is tied to it? Like probably not. It's
Yeah.
a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I think that's probably true across the board here in the US and back home. If you know your employment is tied to like you being vocal about certain things, it'll probably stop you from being as open and transparent.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, interesting. So you talked about being in Cote d'Ivoire. How long were you there for?
I was just there for like 8 months, just eight
Okay,
months.
8 months.
But I
Okay.
loved it.
Yeah.
I recently visited like about a year or two ago and I enjoyed it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like it's definitely a part of my journey.
Yeah. And then you also moved back to Nigeria. Like your background is Nigerian, right? So you moved back to Nigeria at some point,
I did, yeah, in 2020.
2020. What was the reason for that?
So I was in a crossroad in a space of transition, similar to kind of a lot of people now. I felt like COVID was my first whiff of, oh my gosh, this is what it
Yeah.
feels like to be in a transitional period. But I
Yeah.
had just moved back, done a lot of consultancies, and just got into a point where I wanted to pivot into working outside of Africa's mental health matters. So I had committed myself to working for AMH for the first like 8 to 9 months in 2020.
Mhm.
And I got into a point where like I felt I had done what I could do, but I really needed something that was going to pay me. And
Yeah,
so I
you
was
get
like,
income.
God, make a way where there seems to be no way. Like I want to simultaneously work on AMH, but I want to get a job that'll pay me to be able to do that
Mhm.
and also be able to survive. So I had looked into going, back to the continent, even just living in Ghana because I was really, really in love with Ghana at the time, and things just didn't work out. And
Yeah.
then finally, I had gotten a connection to someone who was hiring at Impact Hub Lagos. They're an
Okay.
international organization that focuses on building entrepreneurs and startups and doing a lot of incubation and acceleration programs. And I applied.
Was that in Yaba or
No, this was in Lagos.
like no, but I'm saying
In
like
Ikoyi. Oh, sorry, in
okay,
Ikoyi.
okay, cool.
Yeah, this was in Ikoyi. And yeah, I applied, and the person that was leading the team at the time, thought it would be a really good fit for me. So yeah, I moved, not
Wow.
knowing really what was on the other end of.
Had you lived in Nigeria before that?
No, never. And I actually had vowed to myself I was never, because I had done my mental health conference in Lagos, and I had been so frustrated by just that process of getting things done that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never coming back to this country again, like to live. I can never. So it was actually a full circle moment from saying never to now living there
Yeah.
indefinitely.
So how was that? What was that like? Like that transition from having, I'm assuming, never been there before. Well, you'd been for the conference, but never lived there before, to like now living there full time. Like, how were you able to kind of build community and sustain your own mental health? Because that's a big change too.
Yeah, no, I mean, talk about transition. I went from not having a job to being employed, which I was very happy about. But then coming into Nigeria, one, there was a lot of negative talk around my move. Like, why would you ever want to move to Nigeria? There's nothing good that can come from that
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
Do you see the instability of things now? Why? So it was one of those things where I felt like I had to also just rely on God, and believe that like He called me for such a
Hmm.
time as this and this season to live there. And whether or not that looked appealing to the people around me or not, I was confident that this is where God wanted me to be. So that's what kind of really propelled me forward. And also the goal was that like outside of this job, I'm gonna work my butt off, and I'm gonna get AMH off the ground. Like I'm gonna continue to work, do conferences, do everything that I need to do to make this work. So I went in with the vision, but then of course I get there and there's NSARS and there's just a lot of like unrest, right? There's just a lot going on at the same time. COVID,
Yeah.
NSARS, the it just seemed like a lot, right?
The whole world was going through it, I
It
think.
was the world was just
Yeah.
it was a crazy time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I moved here, and the great thing was that I had a soft landing because I did have a lot of people that I could relate to, that were working in the organization, because some of them were similar to me in the fact that they had schooled abroad and then come back to Nigeria. So my coworkers were a great, space for me to kind of just get to know and, you know, um, integrate into the community, into the society that I was working in. But then I also had family. My cousins were really a good
Oh,
source of love, and they still are. Like I personally, when I look back in Nigeria, as far as like the closest people to me, they're my family. They're my cousins. My
yeah.
cousins that I didn't even have any idea existed until like,
When you move back, they were like your
yeah.
buddies.
And they're the best thing that they're the best thing that ever happened to me. You know what I mean? Like because Nigeria can be it's a very different world, right? In comparison to being born and raised here
Yeah,
in the States. People go for dirty December and they think
that's
that's the
it.
Lagos life, and it's like no, not
Yeah.
even a little bit,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you have people who are who have been born and raised in Nigeria, went to primary school, secondary school, did the whole nine yards, and they have their crew or their friends or the people that they
You
associate
have
with.
to like, try to fit into that space.
Exactly. And then Nigeria is also very classist, I'm sure you
Yeah,
know.
very
And
classist, very
as an American,
cliquey.
my mind doesn't operate like that. I don't think
Yeah,
anyone is below me. I don't think anyone's
yeah,
above me. I'm
yeah.
just living life, you know? And
I don't
so
even want to say Nigeria. I would say maybe Lagos and Abuja to a degree are classist.
I think it happens everywhere, no matter where you are,
I
to
think
be
we're just like
honest.
we're just classist people. Like yeah,
They're just classist people. Like, no matter if you're in Ibadan or Egypt, like wherever you are, you find
yeah,
yourself, there's
yeah.
someone that believes that because they have more money than you, they're better than you.
That's true.
That's just
Money is the differentiator. So that's
it
true.
is. It is. So I mean, and not to say I don't blame them,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's just a very different perspective and environment from what I was used to.
Mhm.
And so developing meaningful relationships can be very hard, but I found myself doing it. I don't know how. I think I'm just an open person for the most part. And
Yeah.
I did go out quite a bit. My cousins also helped me integrate into the environment. And
Mhm.
I think generally speaking, I just, also I was active in my church. I got
Yeah.
involved in a church and then I started creating community myself. I started a platform called Connected Spaces where
Yep.
I'd create spaces for people to network and meet new people. And yeah, I think generally speaking, I think being focused on my mission, understanding why I'm there, being at the
Mhm.
right place at the right time, going and being intentional about the places I was going to as well, kind
Yeah.
of before I knew it, created a space where I felt like Nigeria was home.
Yeah, yeah. And I definitely understand it. Like, even though I moved quite a while before you did, but when I was there for 2 years for NYC, this is like 2014 to 2016.
Yeah,
Was in Abuja. It was different because I mean it was a change. Even though I went to primary school in Nigeria, I went to secondary school partially as well in Nigeria, but moving back and then like having to reconnect with people and having
right.
to like, reestablish those connections. And I was in Abuja. Most of my connections were in Lagos actually. So I actually had to start from fresh, like
I'm
from
sorry.
Abuja. But no, I agree. I think like building your own community, building your own connections, all of those things are definitely important. And I think, I mean, I remember when we're moving back, people were like, "Oh, you're gonna find your husband in Nigeria," and I was like, I don't think so," and I did not, but
Mhm.
you did. So,
I did. I did.
yeah. So, can you like tell us a little bit about that? How'd you guys meet?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, with me going into Nigeria, that one of the major challenges, also the negative talk, was that, oh, you're not going to find your husband in Nigeria
Okay.
because
So it was the
Nigeria,
opposite. Okay.
yeah, it was the opposite actually, because most people believe that because I was an American going in with the blue passport, it'd be very hard to find
Who
someone
would be genuine?
who would not be
Yeah.
using me or would not try or attempt to use me
Japa.
for that simple advantage, right?
Yeah.
And they thought that I needed to be very beware of anybody that comes.
Because once you
That
come up and you start talking, they're gonna be like, "Ooh."
they're like, oh, this sweet babe, let me try to, and I don't know if they thought I was an idiot or if they thought that I wasn't bright enough, but I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
get it, I'm aware, but my mind wasn't even there. I'm moving because I believe this is gonna take me to the next level of my career. And, for many people, they thought that was gonna be a setback to me building a relationship long term. Just because like the ideal man that I need to be with is in the US and here I am going to Nigeria, so I'm going the opposite way. And they also, a lot of people also said, a man is looking for stability and you're just all over the place. You were in South Africa, you were in Abidjan, you were in Ghana, you're going to Nigeria, like you just need to settle down, like you're doing too much.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of negative talk, but I just felt like, once again, if God is calling me to do this, then he's already sorted everything out. I don't need to worry.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what happened. So I had been in Nigeria for 4 years, and it wasn't until my fourth year living in Nigeria that I met my husband. I had, people I had been talking to and, dealing with
Yeah.
throughout the duration of the time I was there. And for the most part, I'm very much like I build relationships based on friendship because if I can't be friends with you, then I can't see myself being,
Being with
romantically
yeah.
involved or, yeah, exactly. So, um, I think generally speaking, most men, the men that I had dated or talked to, just weren't ready. They didn't want to settle down. They weren't ready to get in the headspace of, being a husband or, pursuing marriage. And I had to be very intentional, like my fourth year, in making the decision that I was not going to move forward with any relationship at all unless I believed that it was going to lead to marriage. And
Yeah.
obviously it's very contradictory to some people because it's like, well, how do you
How would you
know
know? Yeah. How would
if
you know
it's gonna lead to marriage
from
if
the
you actually
first
don't
date?
date
Yeah.
them? And I'm like, look, I don't know what y'all, I know what y'all are talking about, but God's gonna tell me, right? I'm gonna rely on God. I'm gonna, use a spirit of discernment
Yeah.
to identify whether or not this is the right person for me. And it seemed cliche, but I stopped dating. I was like, you know what? I'm not just dating to date. Like, I don't want nobody's son to take me out and wine and dine me. I've been there, done that. I can
Mhm.
dine
And
myself. Like,
Nigerian men, they know how to wine and dine you. That's one
they
thing they
surely
do.
do. They will spend the money. They will spend the money. But I wasn't concerned about that. I'm like, I treat myself out all the time. I remember like getting paychecks and I'm getting paid in USD. I can go out every day if I want, like at
Yeah.
this point, I don't need that extra companionship. I actually want to learn to just be on my own and enjoy my own company. And therefore, when the right person comes, it's an addition to,
Yeah.
the life already built. Not that I'm like craving it because I can't
Craving it.
do
Yeah.
life alone. I can't do life alone.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I just really wanted God's will to be done because like I know or had seen what marrying the wrong person could do. And so I was just like, God, like, I want you to, take control of this. And so that's what he did. I mean, I didn't date and I met my husband at a friend's get together that
Mhm.
I had organized with another young lady. And she had actually asked me to invite my male friends because she was like,
Yeah.
oh, you have a lot of male friends, Vanessa. Like, can you
Right.
just invite them
Yeah.
to partake in this get together because I have a
Mhm.
lot of single female friends and they're looking and I'm like, okay, cool. So I
Yeah.
sent I sent the invitation to a lot of my male friends and I pulled up and there was a guy there that I had not invited and I'm like, well, whose friend is this because it's not mine. And she was like, oh no, that's my friend, and I was like, okay, cool, cool, cool. But he had an American accent and I'm like, I know all the in my brain I thought I had met all of the Americans in the
You
DS
knew all the
in Nigeria
returnees already. Yeah, you were
because
like,
at this point, like you said, the returnees, you kind of go out, you're in spaces, and you kind of get a good idea of who's
yeah,
who and
true. Yeah.
who's like you, essentially. So
Yeah.
I was like very kind of thrown off because I had never met this person before.
Mhm.
And I mean, little did I know that he had been in Nigeria for 10 years. He was born and raised in
Wow.
Chicago and moved right after he graduated from his undergraduate degree. And yeah, we met, nothing happened. We exchanged numbers. And my friend had told me, like, oh, you know what? He's not really someone to be serious. He has two startups. He's
Mhm.
really focused on his
Too
work.
busy. Yeah.
He's too busy. So I was like, thank you, girl. Say less. I'm
Yeah.
done. I don't even need to look in that direction. So I kept it pushing. And once again, as God would have it, during the elections, things just shut down. The currency changed.
Mhm.
Everything was just going once again haywire. And
Yeah.
as a result of that, my job had sent me money to purchase a new laptop, but I could no longer go to the bank and get dollars because of everything that was happening.
Mhm.
So, long and short, I had belonged to this WhatsApp group for about 3 years since I moved to Nigeria and never used it because I didn't trust it. I'm like, I'm not sending and transferring money with people I don't know. But
Yeah.
out of desperation, I'm like, you know what? Today it seems like I'm going to have to.
Don't
So,
tell
I,
me. Is it the returnees
no,
WhatsApp
no,
group?
no, it's
Okay.
not. It's called Green Panda.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, so it's Green Panda. There was a bunch of people on the platform that
Mhm.
I knew, and so that's kind of what even allowed me to be okay with using it. And I transferred the money, and the money did not come, sis.
Oh no.
It did not land into my USD account. I mean, to my Ghana account. So I
Wait,
sent
you transferred
USD.
it to somebody?
Yeah, so they had connected me to a third party of someone
I
who
see.
had naira to send to me. So they said I should send them, Zell them USD, and then that person they didn't even say that person. They would be the one to send me the Naira equivalent.
Okay.
So I did that and I never got the money.
Really?
Um, And so I started freaking out. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, well, we sent it. We have the receipt. I'm like, well, I don't have it. It started going, crazy. And next thing you know, I'm looking at the admins of the chat, and I'm like, oh, that's the kid I met
Yeah.
at the get together.
Yeah.
So I messaged him. I'm like, hey, I don't know if you remembered me, but look, I'm here dealing with this platform, and I saw you're an admin. I want to know if it's a scam or not. And he's like, oh, no, 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 like it's not a scam. I'm actually the founder. And I'm like, oh my gosh. He's like, yeah, me and my co-founder, we run the platform, and this is down the third. And so I'm like, well, y'all need to give me my money because I don't have it. So, um, long and short, I went 3 days without my money coming. And the third day, I think the second to third day, he called me and he was like, hey, have you gotten your funds yet? And I'm like, no. And he
Mhm.
goes like, have you prayed about it?
Mhm.
Prayed about it. Where is my money? Where's my money, sir?
Like,
Like,
where's my money?
give me my money. So that being said, he was like, nah, because it seems like a closed door, like this has never happened. And I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know, but I couldn't tell you, you know what I mean? Like I've never experienced this. The third day, him and his partner sent an email to the bank. I go to the bank physically. I'm trying everything to
Mhm.
get this thing sorted. And at that point, I was even thinking of getting lawyers involved because I'm like, I need that money. It's not even mine, it's my job's. And so we kind of got it into it, and the money just miraculously dropped the third day on that evening. And from there we started communicating. He invited me out, and then one day, during that time he invited me out with a group of people. There was other people there. We got to know each other a little bit more, and he asked if he could contact me the next day, and the rest is history.
So it started from you looking for money to, getting
Yes,
your
reacquainted with.
client. So that's
Mhm.
amazing. That's so interesting. Wow, that's an interesting start to the story. And I think it's also interesting that he says, "Did you pray about it?" Like that's not something that you hear,
Often, right? Yeah.
especially with men. You don't hear men saying stuff like that often. Like I think,
No, that was actually one of the major things that made me like, because this whole time I'm vexing, I'm upset. I'm not even thinking about the fact that, mind you, my friend already told me this guy has two startups. He's not,
so you're not
so I'm
even
like,
thinking about him romantic in that way. You're just
I'm
like,
like, just give me my money,
yeah.
And so when he says, did you pray about it? I'm like, pray, like, so I thought that was quite interesting as well.
Oh, okay. So I know like that when you and I met for the first time in person at that house party, you guys were still
Yeah.
dating at the time, but like it sounded I think he was in Nigeria and you were back in the US, right? So you guys
No, no, no. We had both been visiting from
were
Nigeria.
were both visiting. So were you guys ever long distance at some point, or are you long
Yeah,
distance
we
now?
did. We
Okay,
we
okay,
were we
okay,
were long distance when we first started dating for a little bit, just for like 3 or 4 months. So
okay.
he asked me to be his girlfriend, and then 4 months, and then like a week later, I had to travel to the US for the summer. And then we were also long distance when I got engaged.
Yeah.
Um, Literally a week later, I left
Mm.
and went to the US. And
Yeah.
then eventually he came to the US as well. But we were long distance for like maybe 2, 3 months.
Okay, that's not
And
bad.
then we were also long distance after I got married.
Ah,
So but that was a little longer, like 4 or 5 months.
yeah.
Yeah. So we've been long distance on and off.
On and off. Are you guys long distance now, or is he back in the
No, he's here. We're both together,
Okay,
thankfully.
yay.
He's
Thank
been
God.
here in America since July. So
Okay.
we're going to be here together till the end of the year.
Okay, good, good. That's amazing. So I mean, that's just like I think that's really cool that you got to have that experience moving back and obviously gaining this relationship and a partner. I think that's
Yeah.
amazing. So maybe let's go back to African mental health matters. You were talking about employee wellness, and I wanted to maybe give you a chance to talk a bit more about that. Like, what was that segue like? I know when we were, supporting, well, when I used to support with it, that was something that you were always talking about
Oh,
getting
yeah.
employee wellness. So maybe just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we've gone through so much pivoting in the last 3 to 4 years. And I was even telling someone more recently that like every single time I've tried to like let go of AMH, it's been like God sends someone new, and they're like, hey, I want to work on this. What are you
Mhm.
guys doing? How are you? And I'm like, bruh, I thought I was done with this, but I think it's just been a testament of him making me understand that mental health and wellness is somewhat of a ministry, like it's a calling as well.
Mhm.
And it didn't start or wasn't birthed out of just, it wasn't random. Like it was something that um I'm supposed to be committed to, at least until he says, until he says otherwise. But it's been a process of just trying to align our mission and our values and our programming and really understand, okay, what is it that we do and how do we do it well? And I think you were a part of us when we were trying to really take out the time to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
so in the last year and some change, we've kind of like started from scratch. We've had to kind of rebuild from the ground up, and it's been a lot, but God has been faithful because I think we're finally arriving at what it is that we do well. And really, like I said, it's around corporate wellness and
Yeah.
well-being. Understanding that, you have organizations and businesses that accommodate employees on a day-to-day. You spend at least 95% of your time
Work. Yeah.
with those employees in the workspace, whether that's virtually or in person. And ideally, a lot of times, organizations are always worried about productivity and performance, and
Agree.
they're trying to get their next level. But
Yeah.
ideally, what we have understood that you cannot do that without having staff that are fully showing up and being able to perform at their best. And a lot of times, the impediment to that is, lack of mental health and wellness being practiced in their personal and individual lives. And unfortunately, we like to say work is work and life, your life is your life, and they're two separate things. But it's really just understanding that there's a work life integration that comes in. It's not separate, but rather this person showing up at work, showing up at home, showing up, in their children's school or wherever it is that they show up, and it's it being just one person, and
Yeah.
really understanding that, like, there are things that person may be going through that impede their ability to be able to show up 100% because they've yet to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I think for us, we've built programming up with startups, but yeah, we're really, really big on just working with organizations to do an assessment, understanding where the gaps currently lie, and then curating programs that specifically speak to the needs of that organization. And from there, building something that works for them. Right. And then also being able to incorporate feedback from the employees to understand how we can better improve upon our wellness sessions, having resources like therapy that are available to them to be able to book separately, even from the sessions that we hold. And then also just having monthly newsletters and resources that we share that can just help overall information sharing when it comes to mental health and wellness. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just one piece to what we're actually building on a larger scale. I don't want to say too much, but we are also looking at doing resource mobilization for community-based organizations on the continent that are really not able to um, gain access to funding. And so really bridging that gap by, providing them the means for that, and also just capacity building, like being an organization, how are you able to, gain funds, but also how are you able to pitch, and how are you able to scale, and how are you able to do market research and branding and position yourself in a way to be sustainable, but to also be successful.
Well, especially now with everything going on with the, changes to foreign aid and reduction in, what's available for these organizations, I think it's important for them to be able to redesign their approach. And yeah, that capacity building is extremely important right now. So that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm excited because I think there's also this There's also an understanding that you can achieve way more together than apart. And so creating once again community of organizations to be able to support the work that they're doing, where they can knowledge, there's knowledge sharing that's exchanged. There's also just support, right? And because it can be a very lonely journey when you're running a community-based organization, but knowing that there are other people on that similar path as you that you can rely on, I think makes that much of a difference. And then the last piece is just understanding that like mental health and wellness is not separate from the work that we do, right? Like integration of mental health and wellness in everything. Um, is something that we're really trying to push because we understand that like regardless of the work you're doing, like mental health and wellness has a role that it plays. And so we're also helping people like reinvent and reimagine the role that mental health and wellness plays in the work that they're doing.
Yeah. So I wonder though, like just as you're working with employers, I'm assuming you're working mostly with employers in Africa. Is that the typical? Or
We're trying, yes, we are, but we are trying to expand as well to the diaspora.
so are you getting any pushback from employers when you try to pitch something where they're like, oh, no, that's not really important for us? Or is it like, is it a bit more collaborative where they're like, okay, let's hear what you have to say and then go back and forth?
Yeah, I want to say there's obviously initial pushback. Some people are in a space where they're just barely surviving. So they're like, we're not paying for any service outside of what is, needed or directly important to us in this moment. And so you will find like, yeah, there's some initial pushback. There's also this pushback on the way that we approach the wellness training. So you'll find that sometimes they'll tell us how to do our job, like, hey, there's an organization, for example, that needs to improve upon their communication, and we need you to do like a communication training. And we're like, well, that's not our area of focus, right? We're really focused primarily on meeting your employers where they're at,
Yeah.
understanding what their challenges may be, and then finding ways, healthy ways to navigate being able to show up and communicate more effectively for sure, but really addressing why they're not able to communicate effectively, not so much about their communication. And
Yeah.
so you find that like sometimes, it becomes like a bit of a pushing back and forth regarding like how we approaching the training because we do want to give organizations the autonomy, but at the same time it's really like person-centered trainings because we want our trainings to directly reflect the pain points of their employees. Also, this need for we've had some challenges with people feeling like they don't want there to be any confidentiality around like the conversations we have.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, like you'll be surprised, but once again, Nigerian employers never cease to amaze me. They're like,
So
they'd
they want to
rather,
know, like, what did he say? What did that person say?
yeah, they
Oh,
don't
wow.
want any secrets or private conversations taking place. They think things that are done in private can be misread and misunderstood. So they want to provide space where everyone is free to say what they would like
Yeah.
in front of each other versus, it being said in private. So
Okay.
there's a bit of complications around it, but then also just understanding like the value. But the good thing about it is that we've partnered with a good organization called Great Places to Work, and they set a standard of what a great places to work looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and people thrive by getting a stamp of approval from them on an
Yeah. So if
international
they have
level.
that on their page, then it kind of shows that they're
It's
adhering to the standard. Yeah.
exactly. So because we partnered with them, they've fortunately given us a platform where we can share more about our work, and through that, we're able to kind of penetrate the space to get them on board on prioritizing the mental health and wellness of their employees.
Okay, okay, that's really interesting. I really like that. And when you're kind of designing an event or a space or a group, whatever it is, what do you see like that tells you that belonging is happening? Like what are you looking for? What are you listening for to see that?
To sorry, can you explain that? So you said the belonging is happening,
Yeah,
like
like what do you see where you're like, okay, people are actually connecting, people are actually feeling safe to speak about whatever it is they need to speak about. Like what are the signs that you see in that sense?
yeah, I think some of the signs are that one, your video's on. Many people want to join the sessions and not have their video on, but when you put your video on, it shows that like you're fully engaged, you're fully open to talking and just, being present. So that also unmuting your mic and contributing to the larger
Just the
conversation.
basic stuff, the basic stuff.
The basic stuff, the basic stuff.
Yeah.
Being being intentional about participation, asking questions, sharing from own personal experiences. Um, and I think also just being willing to like, reach out because a lot of times people are like, oh, we don't know if it's appropriate or if, this
Yeah.
will be used against us. But like the bold step of reaching out to us via email or calling us or asking for our advice, like these are steps that you realize that like, okay, wow, people are actually starting to break out of their box a little bit. And although it may feel uncomfortable, it ends up being something that's of great use to not only them but the organization as a whole by them understanding that they know where they're at and they know what resources they need at that time.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's important. I like that you look out for those things, and those are actually important ways to keep a group engaged. Now, I wonder, like on a personal level, because I can tell you, like personally, this year has been just a very much a roller coaster for me.
Yeah, same.
Just in terms of like dealing with unemployment and all the other things. So I'm wondering, like I know what my mental health has been like. It's been very up and down. I wonder, like for you, as someone that is very passionate about mental health and doing all this work, what has your mental health, like how do you navigate your own mental health and what are some things that you do to just be, to be better?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for the longest time I neglected my own mental health. Unfortunately, I think I was more concerned about other people than myself. And I realized like maybe 2 years ago that I was actually dealing with depression. Like I lacked motivation. I wasn't
Yeah.
really as intentional about just doing much of anything other
Mm,
than maybe just going to the gym in the morning, coming back, staying in my gym clothes, not wanting to just do much but laze around and
yeah,
just feeling very like once again unmotivated.
yeah,
And it took a while to get out of that, right? Like I had to literally leave Nigeria. Um, it was a time where my contract was coming to an end for my previous job, and um, I ended up then going into a job that was really toxic in DC. And so it was just like one thing after the other. But number one, I think for me, it's just like understanding where I'm at, taking toll, I mean, taking account of like where I'm at in this moment, tomorrow, the next day, each and every day, really just taking account of where I'm at mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Praying quite a bit has really helped me just to have that communion with God so that I don't feel like I have to carry the burden of life alone.
yeah,
Um, Understanding when I need someone to talk to, whether
yeah,
that be my therapist or a family member or a friend. Unpacking, like not leaving things, not letting things build up to a point where like becomes too much to deal with, but like seeing if something is becoming a regular conversation or issue and taking out time to unpack why I feel the way I feel and what are the necessary steps that I need to take to be able to deal with it. Um and then just understanding like life happens in ebbs and flows. Like life is ever changing, right? The one thing that's consistent is change. And I think the moment that I've realized that like it really just takes me showing up each day for whatever I'm facing to continue to change or improve or whatever. It becomes less of like I just need to get through this season and or I just need to get this new job or I need to just get this new opportunity or I just need to get this money, and more so like, okay, how can I show up today better
yeah,
than I did yesterday to be able to just be one step closer.
yeah,
And even if the day doesn't go the way I expect it, like it's okay because at least I'm actively showing up, you know. But you can't, it's like you can't go into the race, or you can't even, yeah, you can't go into a race, or you can't even go into a ring if you don't get up and you get ready to fight or run or whatever, right? The race, I mean, the end result is nothing, right? You don't even make any
I
type
think
of headway.
I think regardless, like I think if you get up and you just kind of don't take like seize the day or do whatever, like the end result is going to be the end result. So it's kind of
Yeah,
like how you choose to take each day is what you're going to see at the end of the day, kind of thing.
100%.
I definitely agree with you. I think it's just it's really getting that motivation to like push yourself, whether that's from exercise, whether it's that you're praying, like you're saying, whether it's you're getting community around you and talking to people and getting the support that you need, but just putting one foot in front of the other. I
Oh,
think
girl, that's literally what it is. And God can't meet you
yeah,
if you're not doing your part. You know what I mean? It's like, God, I really want a job, but you haven't applied, you haven't
yeah,
spoken to anyone, you haven't sent a DM. And sometimes it is that consistency, but I
mhm,
truly believe like that consistency eventually gets you somewhere. It's like, obviously, no one likes when closed doors are consistently happening, or when you don't get an answer that you prefer. But it's the consistent effort of like, I'm gonna keep on knocking, I'm gonna keep on trying, I'm gonna keep on doing whatever I need to do to get to where, and then, just being also in a space of just reflection, like what's working, what's not working, how can I, reposition myself, how do I pivot, right? What do I have? What can
mhm,
I do with what I have? Sometimes it's not even searching for anything new. It's just like God's already giving you the tools. Now
yeah.
try to start to put them together, you know?
Yeah, that's so true. That's absolutely true. Okay, wow. Like this conversation has been fantastic. I do want
I
I do want us to start getting to the end, but I want to kind of put something out here. What is a concrete action that, listeners to the podcast can take in the next maybe 48 hours to support African mental health matters? Like, what is something they can do and then how can they do it?
That's a great question. And thank you once again, Chioma, for having me on here. It's interesting, once again, like full circle moments. You don't know why God is bringing certain people into your life, but you were actively a volunteer at some point. You did an amazing job. And, we went through so much, I feel like, in so
Yeah.
little time. But then you went on, to do other things, and you're doing amazing work, even just through this podcast. And then now, even having me on this podcast right now, in full circle moment for me is because, like, I just feel that, it's an opportunity that I would have never had if I didn't meet you, if we didn't ever work together, if we didn't interact. So thank you once again, for thinking of me, and for having me on here. But I think for us, like right now, we are once again in the process of rolling out, our new programming and the things that we're, getting ready to do. But right now we need finance. We need access to finance. So if you know of an investor or organization that is giving grants or opportunities to organizations doing work around mental health,
Mhm.
we're here. That would be a great way to engage. If you know of any corporates or
Corporate.
startups that are also looking to implement some type of mental health well-being program,
Mhm.
we're here. If you are in a position where you know of any conferences or opportunities to showcase the work that we're doing and continue to talk about it and bring visibility,
Mhm.
we're here. So those are the three things.
Now that you say that, there's actually an event coming up that I'm speaking at that
Ooh,
I
tell me.
might pull you into. We can talk about it offline. I might,
Okay, okay, okay. Bye, bye,
yeah.
bye.
But it's about African diaspora being more engaged in community-based organizations. And
Okay, cool.
so yeah, we can talk about it and see if AMH can, if you can like speak at the event or participate somehow. So yeah,
Sounds like a plan. Thank you so much,
yeah,
Chioma.
of course, of course. And so I'm gonna close the conversation. I really enjoyed having you on here, but I'm gonna
I
close.
enjoyed being here. This was therapeutic for me, and also some time for me to reflect too. So,
But I'm gonna end with our signature closing question, which is if your life had a theme song right now, what would it be and why?
mm, ooh, the CC Winan song.
Which one? Goodness of God?
Yes.
I feel like
Or
someone else.
actually, is
Had,
it is the goodness of God, or all my life you
yeah,
have been
yeah, that
faithful?
one.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's one. Yeah.
yeah. I feel like some another guest had that as their song.
That would be it, because it's just like, yeah. I'm every day, like, the fact that I'm living, breathing, alive and well, for me is just enough to
Yeah,
thank God. You know what I mean? And when I look back on all my life and the things that He's done, the places He's brought me through, the things that He's allowed me to be able to learn, the ability to even just, be able to show up in spaces that I do right now, I'm just extremely grateful.
yeah, no,
So
it's
yeah.
amazing. And I think you're doing fantastic work. One thing I will say is like I always get like a positive. You're one of those people that I don't think we know each other too well, but we know each other well enough. But I always get just a positive vibe from you. You always just kind of seem you're just exuding this like light, and you have people around you, and you like love to build community, and you love to kind of bring people together. And that's something that I also like to do. So I just really appreciate that about you. And I think you just keep doing that, keep doing the work that you're doing with African Mental Health Matters. And yeah, I just wish you all the best. I think you're doing amazing.
Thank you so much, Chioma. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. I'm super
Yeah.
grateful for the opportunity to be on Rooted and Rising. And I'm really grateful we're able to have this conversation and continue to do what you're doing as well. Because I mean, I know for a fact, I'm sure it's making such a difference in the lives of people that come in contact with this platform. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vanessa. And thanks for listening, guys. And feel free to follow African Mental Health Matters on social media. I think you're on IG,
Yes.
Instagram. Yeah. So I'll put
TikTok, website,
TikTok.
whatever. Yeah,
There you
we're on TikTok now.
All right. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.